talk about predicting legal change. So first, a moment of background. Lawyers are pretty good at saying what the law is now, and they're pretty good at saying how the law is likely to be applied to specific facts. Those are the basic skills that we are trying to help law students develop in law school. But where lawyers and law professors often struggle is in predicting legal change, when it's going to happen, and what the substance of that change might be. And that's too bad, because people are often interested to know how the law is going to change and in what way. So our regulations, say, of fuel efficiency standards in cars, are those going to get less stringent, or are they going to stay the same? Is judicial precedent going to be overturned? Roe v. Wade, is that going to be overturned? Is a bill that's making its way through Congress right now going to become law? I don't know, the bill on making airline seats humane, for example. People want to know answers to questions like these, and they often ask lawyers about these sorts of things. But unfortunately, there's nothing inherent to legal methods that allows lawyers to necessarily have an advantage in predicting these kinds of change. In fact, traditional legal methods are really retrospective. They draw on precedents and existing law, and they're trying to predict the future based on what's happened in the past. When there's an actual change in the substance of the law, it's a lot harder for lawyers, at least when they're inward looking into our own discipline, to know when that's going to happen. Okay, that said, it sure would be nice to be able to reliably predict how laws will change. Nice for lawyers, nice for their clients, nice for society. And so given that there's this question, a real question about whether lawyers have any kind of comparative advantage in predicting this sort of thing, then maybe data science can help. So I think there are at least three reasonable directions to think about data science going here to help law, based on three different sources of legal change: courts, legislatures, and agencies. And there is some data science work already being done on this, particularly in the first two, trying to predict Supreme Court decisions and when the Supreme Court's likely to sort of change its mind, modeling legislative change. There's work that's being done on that as well. And what I'm particularly interested in is this third category, which tends to get less attention, predicting regulatory change in laws created by agencies. So agencies don't tend to get the same love that other legal institutions do. I think that's misguided. But here's something to know about agencies. It's that they actually make more binding rules of conduct, more laws, than legislatures and courts combined. So federal agencies publish between 60 and 100,000 pages of regulatory material a year in the Federal Register alone. There's 500,000 federal adjudications at agencies a year. So they're creating a lot of law, and sometimes that law is a change from what has happened in the past. A neat thing about the way that agencies operate is that for most of the most important agency actions, they actually provide notice ahead of time when they're considering changing the law. And they often say what the options they're considering might be. So this kind of poses, I think, an interesting, a valuable question, which is how can we accurately predict the substance of that change, given the heads up from the agencies that it might be coming? So take the question of whether fuel efficiency standards are going to become less stringent, for example. The agency responsible for this just last month published a notice that they're considering making them less stringent. So are they going to do that? So one possibility for predicting that would be to try to use traditional legal tools. We've already said those are actually not so helpful in predicting this kind of change in behavior. Another possibility would be to try to develop data science tools to create these sorts of predictions. For example, you could compile stock market data on likely winners and losers. So car makers with more efficient fleets, smaller, more nimble fleets are very likely to do worse under this regulation. So anyway, identify likely winners and losers. And then you can figure out what the stock market is predicting from what it is that's likely to happen with the regulatory change. Right now, regulatory lawyers do not rely on these kinds of tools, even though they're frequently asked to predict these sorts of questions. So having such a thing, having such a tool would be extraordinarily helpful, helpful for them, helpful for their clients, etc. if it turned out that the stock market was actually better at predicting regulatory change than lawyers are now. The next thing about this particular structure, this particular approach to predicting legal change would be even if it turned out that regulatory lawyers were, in fact, better than the stock market at a change. And there's a sort of silver lining, which is that that would mean that you could make endless buckets of cash beating the stock market. So sort of, if you like endless buckets of cash, this structure of this study has a bonus attached to it. Either way, though, we would end up knowing more about when the law changes, how to predict those changes, and that would be extraordinarily valuable to the law. And so this is a place where data science has the opportunity to really provide extraordinary